It's 9:30 on the dot. Hi, gang. I'm Jason Rodi. This is the first class I teach ever. And I am very happy to be doing so. I'm 43 years old. I'm from Montreal. I am in Montreal. And something maybe interesting about me from your perspective is that I went to university in the States as well. And maybe I studied film. So what I'm going to want to start with is simply just go around and get everybody to introduce themselves and to mention maybe a movie that you love or a movie experience that you had. And I'd also like your major, if you're also a film student or gaming or whatever it may be. And yeah, let's go from there. So Jason Rodi, 43, film student, and the film that really got me into this is Singing in the Rain, because it's about people making movies, and it seemed so easy. They're all actors, and they just have an idea, and they go, oh, I have an idea for a movie. It goes something like this. And then you just point to a screen and it all comes together. So for a 6-year-old, that seemed like the place I wanted to live in, was just movies themselves. So that's my story. Who's next? I'll call on Christian Roby.
Hi, I'm Christian Roby. I'm a game design major. And I would have to say just a movie that has really stuck out to me and made an impact on me would probably be the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movies that came out, what was that, a few years ago maybe. I just liked learning about the history behind it and, how they were doing different animation techniques to, change up the characters and actually use animation to build on the characters, not just the story.
Great. That's, have you seen Soul?
I haven't gone around to it yet. I've been meaning to.
Well, it's not quite as experimental in terms of its style as the Spider-Verse, but yeah, it shifts a couple of times for dramatic effect, and it is super effective. So it's nice to see those experimental techniques getting into more mainstream movies. All right, thanks, Christian. How about you, Alex Goodman?
Hi, I'm Alex, he, him, or they, them pronouns. And my favorite movie has to be Usual Suspects,
Oh, yeah.
especially since I was able to watch it at 18 without being spoiled on the ending. So that's a movie that felt good to watch and rewatch, and having it be a classic that I could sink into. I enjoyed that.
Do you ever walk down the street with the limp and just shake it off?
Oh my God, that ending scene. I love it so much. And he has so many good lines.
Super, thank you. You're a film student as well?
No, I'm a game artist.
You're a game artist, yeah. Most of you, I imagine, are. All right, and Lillian Clark.
Hi, I'm Lillian. I'm a game artist, I guess. I guess like the movie, I guess Klaus, is like I liked a lot because it like shows like how like different animation techniques can work together, and like it was just like a huge advancement in 2D animation. So
Ah, super. We just saw it really recently in my house, and yeah, we did love it. I didn't watch it carefully enough, so since it's your favorite movie, I promise you I'll get back to it before the winter is over. Yeah, that's the one with Jason Schwartzman, right?
I'm
I
not
think
quite
so.
sure of the
I
actor's
think
name.
that's voices, yeah. All right. How about you, Jack?
Hi, I'm Jack Tenda. I'm a junior game artist, and I'd say kind of a movie experience, not like my favorite movie, but kind of an experience that has stuck out with me. was watching the first Hunger Games in theaters on like opening day. And it just kind of sticks out in my mind because like 12-year-old Jack going to the movies with his parents. I've never really seen at the time, I've never really seen a movie like it, and it kind of introduced me to like this whole like new like sci-fi dystopian kind of movies, and just a really awesome experience for me at the time.
Great. Did you ever see Battle Royale? Japanese film?
No, I didn't. I've never seen that.
Aha. Well, you must, because you're going to see that Hunger Games is a ripoff of that movie.
Oh,
Yeah, it's more hardcore though, a lot more hardcore than Hunger Games. So, yeah, it's really something. It's just all these trouble students that instead of sending them to detention, instead of going to detention, they're all go off to some camp on an island, and well, only one will return. It's it's really something. Yeah. All right. So that's Battle Royale, if you want to take notes. Sophia White.
Hello, I'm Sophia.
Hello.
I'm also a game art major. I use they them pronouns as well. And I don't really know what my favorite movie would be, but I really like the Grand Budapest Hotel. And I think like that movie, I don't know, it just like opened up a new avenue for me of like funny little films. I don't really know how to describe them, but I just really enjoy their aesthetic and their like overall feel and vibe.
Yeah. You've seen every one of Wes Anderson's movies, I assume?
No, I've only seen like 2.
Well, they're all fantastic, and they all have a similar feel. So if you really enjoyed that movie, you have to see the rest.
I know.
And now you must all be getting impressed with my knowledge of movies already. Hopefully, if I'm doing good, then I'll stop showing off soon. All right, let's see. I've also got Blade Osborne. Blade, what's a movie experience that changed you or struck you?
Hello, I'm Blade.
Hello.
I'm a game artist, and I guess one of my favorite movies is Blade Runner, just because I love the environment and how they built the scenes for the actual movie.
Yeah, that's a really good one too. And you've seen the second one, 2049, I
no,
think?
I want to. I've been looking to see if I can like buy it in a store, but I haven't seen
Well,
it yet.
it's not a Canadian film, but it is from a Canadian director. You know that, right?
Yes.
Yes. What's his name?
I'm actually not sure of his name. I just know he was Canadian.
That's right. It's Denis Villeneuve, and we're going to be talking about him as well. He was named the most important director of the past 10 years by the Hollywood Critics Association. So I don't know. We must be putting something good in the water up here. Yeah. And Blade Runner, you should check out Ridley Scott's other films as well, because it's very interesting how he kind of went towards that. He started from doing sets, I believe, like decor for movies, and he moved into directing ads and music videos, but especially ads. And yeah, it's interesting to see how those techniques led to Blade Runner, which is just a visual feast. And yeah, super interesting techniques for sure, that we're still borrowing on today with miniatures and so on. Okay, super. And Donovan.
Hello, good morning. I'm Donovan. I think a movie experience that like recently stuck out to me was Avengers Infinity War. Because I came out about 2018, so I just turned 18. Like I had my own car and I was able to drive, and I felt like an adult. And I remember I took my sister to opening day, right after the midnight showing, and she's like, "What are we doing?" I'm like, "We're gonna go watch Infinity War." And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm an adult. I have money now. I have my own income. We are going to go watch this movie. And we went for the 12:30 showing, and it was packed, but it was such a weird, surreal experience. Like, I'm an adult and I'm doing adult things and I'm going to go watch a movie. This is great. And then I'm like, there's people everywhere. This might have been a mistake, but it was a good movie and it was well worth it. But it was still like oh, this was cool. I'm also surrounded by 100 people. Excellent.
It's interesting too that this was really an event film, and Endgame as well, of course, even more of an event in a way. But movies weren't always events in that way. You know, Jaws was the first blockbuster, and then Star Wars was really the first kind of event movie. And that's my close up. Yeah, it's okay to. And yeah, when we look at the movies that are coming out of Marvel now, and they're all trying to replicate kind of that feeling that we had when Star Wars came out, and it seems like if any movie has succeeded since, it's probably those last two Marvel movies. So, or not the last two Marvel movies, but the Infinity War and Endgame. So yeah, it's interesting. You should choose that one. A lot of people of my generation might have said Star Wars. So that's interesting. Nicholas.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Nick. I guess a movie that like just affected me personally, or just like a favorite to me. Probably looking.
Yes, a movie experience you had that that might have changed you a little.
Okay.
Just to get to know you a bit.
Sure. I guess the most recent.
Are you a gaming student?
Yeah, game programming. I think the most.
Had I asked for a game, would you had an answer like that?
Yeah, probably. I would.
Go ahead. What's your game?
Fancy Pants Adventures World 3.
Why?
Well, I never had like many consoles except for the Wii, where I mainly played old GameCube games with my dad's. So playing like some Flash games online and stuff were some of the first experience I got outside of that as a kid. And Fancy Pants had just a really fun visual art style that felt really smooth and fluid, and kind of made me really enjoy just like the feeling of doing something in a game.
Great. Very interesting. Is there something narrative about that game, or is it more, there's always something narrative, but it's not driven by the story, it's more the gameplay, I assume?
Yeah, that one I think is more like aesthetic and gameplay. But I guess with a film, I'd say most recently, I'd say probably Parasite was really good. Just absolutely astounded by that film. I think I've watched it like 4 times now, just to get someone else to watch it for the first time or something like that. Yeah, no, I just really enjoy that one.
Yeah, and have you seen some of his other films? Can't remember. Boone, I think, is his last name.
Yeah, I've seen a bit of
Snowpiercer,
but besides that, no, I haven't seen too much yet, and I know I need to remedy that. I just need the free time.
Yeah, they're all fantastic movies, and he made history by having a foreign film win the best film at I was going to say Cannes, because the Cannes Film Festival has always done that. It's an international festival, but I guess the Oscars became an international film award as well with Parasite.
Yeah, my name is Brandon. I'm a game programming major. Kind of similarly with Nick, I don't immediately think of like a movie that immediately comes to mind as a experience. I mean, I heard you talking earlier about the Marvel franchise, and I think that's one that I very much enjoyed, and just seeing like how all the different movies are like connected. I think that's been a cool experience to watch.
Well, I appreciate that. I was there all along, as I always will be.
I appreciate it.
So what?
I got
tell me
production
about
too.
yourself, Rory.
Well, I'm Rory. I'm a junior game programmer, and recently, this is a different flavor of movie experience. There's a somewhat recent film called What Happened to Monday, and one of my friends really like grasped that phrase, and they just got really into it. So
What's the movie about?
there's a society where you can only have one child, and this family has like 6 or 7 twins.
Oh yeah, I know the movie. Right, it's an action flick.
Yeah, so they just grasped they just latched onto the name. So for like every Tuesday for like 3 months, they would every time the first words they say to me, they like call me up. I'd be like hello, and they'd be like, "What happened to Monday?" And then the rest of my friends would just say it back, and it would be like 10 minutes. So that movie
Very
has
good.
irreparably changed my life.
I see. So Donovan Garcia, what happened to Monday, Donovan?
I don't know. What did happen on Monday? Maybe Tuesday came? Who knows? Who's to say?
Yeah, I'd say Tuesday came.
I'm Tuesday. Maybe Wednesday. Wednesday. You never see Wednesday coming. It always just shows up in the middle of the week. Like, where were you the whole time?
So Brittany, go ahead, please.
Okay. So I'm Brittany Allendek. I'm a game artist here at Champlain, a third year. And I have to say my favorite movie of all time was The Truman Show, not because I liked it, but because it's impacted my life in a way. Like the first time I watched it, it didn't really, I think I was really young, so it didn't really impact me at all, but I kept watching it because my family would watch it occasionally. And I just like, it kind of scares me, like the ideas in that show, which are super interesting. So, gotta say that one's left
Yeah.
an impression on me.
Well, Brittany, you just picked one of my favorite movies as well. And you can see a thread with Singing in the Rain. And this one, it's that I really love movies about movies or media.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably know that The Truman Show came out before reality shows even existed. So it was a really novel idea. And it's you could almost say that they invented reality shows or the idea of reality shows with that film written by Andrew Nichols, if I remember correctly. And yeah, I just showed it to my girls as well. I have an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they loved it as well. They really connected with Truman's life and could understand what he might be going through. And now what's interesting is that we might all be living in the Truman Show to some degree. At least I'd like to think so. Because I like this idea of living in movies. So very good. Are we missing anybody else that we haven't heard from?
Yeah, I haven't gone yet.
Evan, go ahead, please.
All right, I'm Evan. I'm a junior game design major, and a movie that's my favorite, and also I had a good experience with was the first Kingsman movie back in 2014, because I think my dad and I had dropped my mom off somewhere in like Plainville, and we were just trying to look for something to do. And so we were looking through the movies, and we hadn't heard a scene of Kingsman before, and we kind of went in blind. And it just kind of like checked every box for me and my dad and the types of movies that we like. And I think it also ended up being the first R movie I ever saw in theaters, so that was kind of like a checkpoint as well. So ever since then, that's been my favorite movie.
Yeah, that's a movie by Matthew Vaughn.
Yeah.
Matthew Vaughn, I'll just tell you some of his other films. He did his first one, I think, was Stardust. He probably did something before that, but he also did Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
Which is in a similar vein. It's quite different, but it has that hyper reality, high shutter speed kind of action, very choreographed. It's really unique, his style. And he also did the kind of rebooted the X-Men with First Class, which I thought was really great as well. And So yeah, Matthew Vaughn is a super interesting director. I know he's coming out with something soon that's a bit that's new, that's different from because he did a second Kingsman movie, but I can't think of it now. But he is I could say he's an important new director. He similar to, not quite, but similar to how The Matrix was very impactful in the industry. I think his style, and especially with Kick-Ass, with seeing like kids fighting in a violent film like that, it changed some things for the better, maybe, or not. I'm not sure. So that's an interesting choice. It's a great film, Kingsman, for sure. That church scene is insane.
Yeah.
Seeing the camera travel like that, I
remember
have
that.
no idea.
Yeah, I remember turning to my dad after that scene and being like, "Holy shit!" After that scene, like I couldn't believe how cool it was, how good it was.
Yeah. Super. Anybody else?
Yeah, I haven't gone yet. Ooh,
Go ahead.
Okay, cool.
I can hear you, but can't see you.
Oh, weird. Okay, my camera's on.
Oh no, I can see you, but you're just not taking over the screen. So I'm just gonna pin you.
Oh.
This might hurt.
My settings later.
No, it's good. You're up now.
All right. My name is Alex. I'm a third-year game production management major, and I would say like the movie franchise that's probably affected me the most would be Star Wars. I am just ever since watching those movies, I've really gotten into like the lore of everything behind that. I've watched like the shows, I've read some of the books, and so that's really like the first set of media that I've just really, really engaged with beyond, I guess, what the movies were. It started with the movies, but then it's really like pushed me to go expand that.
Yeah. And are you enjoying The Mandalorian?
Oh yeah. I very much enjoyed The Mandalorian.
How do you feel about, for someone who experienced Star Wars in a deferred manner, like I grew up with Star Wars, and when the prequels came out, I was probably around your age, and so I got to experience that, those Star Wars movies coming out for the first time. It was something special about that, because we did feel like we missed out with the first three Star Wars. My generation, we missed out on that experience. So when I was, I guess it was 18 or 19 when the first prequel came out, it was like, okay, I remember sitting in the theater and seeing the credits come up and the whole theater cheering, and then we can discuss whether those films lived up to expectations or not. But what I'm curious about to hearing from you is, like in The Mandalorian at the end of season 2, or with Rogue One, when they revive these characters and de-age them, how does that make you feel? Does that take you out of the experience, having experienced all of the Star Wars saga from your age? Or what's it like? How do you feel about it?
The de-aging characters, I mean, I think the technology is amazing, that they're even able to do that. I think it didn't really take me out of it because I was just so invested in like the story, and it was so amazing to me to be able to see those characters again, because those are characters that, like, as I grew up watching the movies, those are characters that I really loved. So to be able to see them again was something that was really exciting. I will say that, like, if they bring back, I don't want to spoil it, but if they bring back that character at the end of Mandalorian for future episodes and like longer portions of story, I think that they should recast it with a different actor, because it's going to be harder to do longer scenes with the de-aged CGI. Because you can tell, like, both scenes that they've done at the end of Rogue One and at the end of Mandalorian were very short scenes that were very limited, which is fine for what it was, and I don't think it took me out of it then. But if they're going to do like longer periods of time with the de-aged characters, I would just recommend like recasting it with like someone who looks a lot like that actor.
Can you name the actor?
For which one? For both of them? Oh yeah, Mark Hamill.
No, but who would you recast?
Oh, I mean, I've seen a lot of them. I've seen a lot of people talking about Sebastian Stan, and like they've done like sort of side by side comparisons, and I can see Sebastian Stan, somewhat looking like him. There's been a few others, but Sebastian Stan was like the one that stood out.
Yeah, that could work really well. We know he can handle a franchise.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm excited for his show that's coming out in March.
That's right. That's right. I don't want to get off subject, but are you also enjoying WandaVision?
Oh, absolutely. That show is so bizarre, and I love it.
Yeah, it's nice that they're free to kind of well, I don't know how much they're experimenting, but it sure feels like experimenting considering how trippy it can get.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited for the new episode tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody else?
I have not.
You can go, Foster.
Hello,
Aiden. I haven't gone yet. I'm Chris Foster, game programming major. My favorite movies as like an experience would probably be movies similar to like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Princess Bride, Spaceballs, that sort of thing. Just the comedy in them, it's something you don't see in a lot of movies, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Love those movies. Very good. How about Aiden? Did I hear from Aiden?
Not yet. I'm Aiden. I'm a game programming major. And my favorite movie is Jaws, because every year I'd go on a beach vacation with my family, and every year it'd be during Shark Week, and every year we'd watch Jaws, and I love that movie, and it's wonderful.
I hear they show it. I think it's in Florida, where the screen faces the water on a beach, and people sit in tubes and watch the movie surrounded by water, which I think is just great, an immersive way to experience such a great film. We watched it again recently as well with my girls. They've been afraid of sharks for a few years. I don't know why. I think it's just the legacy of that first film, of the first Jaws film, that lingers on to this day.
Yeah,
it's like now they have a hard time watching Titanic, imagining how come they're not getting eaten by sharks at the end. It's like there's sharks everywhere. There's sharks in the bath. There's sharks everywhere. And yeah, Spielberg just it was so interesting to watch it again recently and just look at the technique, storytelling techniques he's using, the editing. It's so simple. The music, of course. Yeah. I watched as well a John Williams tribute show where he won a Lifetime Achievement Award from AFI. And it was super interesting to just think, that those two notes from that film, I imagine you can all hear it in your own minds without even me having to do them. It's just incredible that they came up with that just a single guy came up with that. And the music has it's not the whole film, but they say that sound is 50% of the film. There's the image, 50%, and sound is the other half. And maybe if you watch Jaws again, you might think about that. It's really something, the way they use it. Anybody else? Anders, I think.
Yeah, hi. I'm Anders, game art and animation. He, him. As for movies, that's a really tough one for me. I do like a lot of movies, but I think some of my favorite movies of all time are Brazil, Full Metal Jacket, and there's a bunch of other ones, but it would take me a while to name off all of them.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't thought about Brazil in so long. That's by Terry Gilliam. And one of his other films has been mentioned in this conversation already. Can anyone name the other film Terry Gilliam made that somebody also likes? It's Holy Grail. So Terry Gilliam, he was actually part of Monty Python before he went on to just direct. So all those little animations that we know Monty Python for, they're all done by hand by Terry Gilliam, who would also direct the films. And yeah, then he became one of our best directors. With Brazil was his first real, I guess it's not a serious film. It's very funny, but it was a real a movie that was taken very seriously because it's just fantastic, the surrealism in it. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it for a while. I'll check it out again. I just watched Life of Brian a couple of days ago. So as I was working on something else. Yeah. Anybody else?
Sure, I can go. Hi.
Yes, Jake.
My name is
Hello.
Jake. I'm a game design major. He, him. I have a lot of favorite movies, but the most recent one that I can remember that I really enjoyed was Death of Stalin.
Oh yeah.
It hit a lot of notes with me where it's like my kind of comedy, like it's historical satire. It's shot really well, a lot of actors. I really liked it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that movie. I kind of I should have put it on my list of best movies for last year. And I kind of forgot about it. So thank you for reminding me. Great film indeed. Anybody else?
I can go.
Yes, please.
So, hey, I'm Igor. I'm a game programming major. And my favorite movies, it's a very hard question because, there are many different genres, but I would say my favorite movie is Solaris of Tarkovsky.
Oh yeah. Do you like the Soderbergh version as well?
Oh, I actually never watched it.
Okay. Well, we're gonna pause class and we're gonna have you go check that out real quick. Yeah. Some say that it is better than the original, which is very rare. But Soderbergh is a real visionary in his own right, as well. And Tarkovsky is also one of my favorite filmmakers. Stalker is up there too, but Solaris is probably my favorite of his as well. What do you like about Solaris?
Good question. Maybe how deep the thought of the after in there. Like there are a lot of stuff you are thinking about after you finish watching the movie.
Yeah. Well, for everybody else who doesn't know what Solaris is about, it's similar to another film by the same director, Stalker, in the concept. Solaris is about people on a spaceship going towards a kind of sun that is emitting these, I don't even know what to call it, but it's having effects, like supernatural effects on the mind especially. And what happens to the people that are in the spaceship is that whatever they imagine, whatever they think about, dream about, that is something we can't control, our own thoughts. Those things come true. So your worst fears, your worst nightmares, all this stuff, so you have one of the characters whose wife has died, who wakes up one morning next to his wife up on this spaceship. Then is she real? Is she not? She is certainly real. And so how does he handle that? How does he work with her? And so there's, just as you say, there's a lot to unwrap in that movie. And Stalker is similar. In that movie, there's a zone. They call it the zone, and the stalker is kind of like someone who can guide you through the zone. And when you're in the zone, something very similar happens than on Solaris. So, your thoughts and so on will come to life. A child that you might have lost, you'll see running in the background or something. And you definitely need a guide to lead you through that, because even you can't follow a real map to go through the zone. super interesting concepts that it's strange we haven't seen, other than the remake from Soderbergh, that we haven't seen this concept again in maybe, you know what, WandaVision is a lot like those concepts, now that I think of it. So there you go. Anybody else?
I can go. I'm down to go. No one said anything first. So,
Please.
what's up, guys? My name's Jack. I'm a filmmaking major. It's hard to pick a movie, but a movie that I watched actually in school last year is a movie called Son of Saul, which is a Hungarian movie, and I really enjoyed that. And I don't think a lot of people have seen that. So if you have the time and you're into like kind of intense like viewings, then Son of Saul definitely pretty sweet.
Why did you like it so much?
So the whole film is mostly shot like kind of as if they're wearing like a rig and the camera's like right in front of them, like the main character, and it's very close up. So it's super like I don't know. I love the way that it's shot, and yeah, it gets really intense, and it helps drive the story quite a bit with the camera so close to the character.
Great. I will certainly check it out. Thank you. Anybody else we're missing? So that's it, I guess.
I think I hopped in here a little late after
Daniel.
some people already did their introductions and stuff.
Right. If you didn't hear at the beginning, I'm not just asking for your favorite movie. If it's not your favorite movie, it can be really a movie-going experience.
Wait, I don't know. It's hard to pick like a favorite movie. Like there are lots of movies that I like, but I like them for different reasons than like the actual film, you know? I like the story or like visuals and things, but like as far as actual like thinking about the film and what I like, I recently rewatched a bunch of the Star Wars movies with my family, and I really liked how they handled like using the different themes and music tracks that they had set up previously to like reinforce like motifs and things.
Yeah, like what?
Like I don't know, in the prequels, how they used like the Imperial March a lot to foreshadow Anakin's turn to the dark side.
Yeah, we're
Stuff like
mentioning
that.
John Williams again. And John Williams, he's a film composer, but he's truly, in the last 100 years, I can't think of a composer that's been more impactful on our culture. So many themes he has written that we can just go and think of just like that. I don't know if I need to name them, but you know, the only one basically that's worth that he didn't do is Back to the Future that I can think of, you know. And otherwise, like whether it's Indiana Jones or Jurassic Park or anything, where you can put your finger on right away what movie that is. If you just hear a couple of notes, that's John Williams. And yes, the way motifs, they use the right word, the way motifs are used to express character, to foreshadow events, it's really all about storytelling. It's yeah, music is so important in film. All right, so now we've all met. We all know each other. You guys haven't met yourselves because I think we're all cooped up in our homes. In a way, I'm glad that we are, because I don't know if I would be teaching this class were we not in this context. So for me to have the luxury of having you join me here in my studio is just great. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm going to show you some clips, some trailers about from my movies, and I'm going to then show you that's going to be really just to tell you a bit about who I am. We're going to spend maybe, you know, I'm going to try to keep it at 30 minutes max that we're going through some of my past material. And I'll tell you a little bit as well about my own national identity. I am Canadian. I studied in the States. And this class is about Canadian culture through film. And I really had to think about, how to approach that, because the reason why I was hired to teach you this class is because of a film I did last year called Voices of Freedom, which takes place all across this few Americans about freedom. So I had to ask myself, why did they hire me because of this film? And then speaking to them as well, I was getting the impression that they really wanted me to show the film. I was trying to place it and so on, because it's definitely not about Canadian culture. It's about American culture. And in thinking about it, it really occurred to me that when I was young, maybe 6 years old, I can remember really that early wanting to make movies because of some of the movies I had seen, and because I identified with those films and I wanted to be in those films. I wanted my life to be those movies, whatever that meant to a 6, 7, 8-year-old child. And all of those movies are the kind of movies you guys were mentioning. Not so much Tarkovsky or something, but more like Star Wars was not so impactful for me, but Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, and all kinds of American movies. Those are the films I identified with. And I was I'm still French Canadian. I didn't even speak English until I was 11, 12 years old, when I started going to school in English, right next to Vermont. So what is a French Canadian kid feeling like an American for? And so that line of thought is really what opened me up to why it was relevant for me to share Voices of Freedom with you, because I want you to think about your own culture through this class. I'm going to want you to really get an idea of what Canadian culture is all about through the things that I'm going to be sharing with you, and hopefully you're going to start weaving in your own minds a kind of through line of what that means and your own perception of what Canadian culture may be. But through all of this, I really, really, really want you to be questioning the whole time your own culture and your own sense of identity as an American. That's really going to be the point of this whole class, is for you to think critically about that. And I think that's the way that you can really take away the most out of our kind of journey together. So let me show you some of the. First, I'm going to turn the camera just for a moment without ripping any wires out, just to show you where we are. And I think that's a good introduction as well. So first, I'll just introduce you to Hannah, who is an intern with me for, this is the second time I meet her, and she's going to be helping me with this class. And this is my studio. This is a building that I've been here for about 10 years. There's a co-working space back there. And we do all kinds of things here. We do a lot of film production and events, of course. And in this past year, we've been doing a lot of live streaming, webcasting. This is something I've been doing since 2014, this specialization into live streaming and webcasting. So, and the reason for that is that I really just enjoy new forms of storytelling. And much like today, I've got my little setup, and I've got myself kind of hooked up to hopefully, through these 15 classes together, give you an experience and use these tools, these technologies, to express myself as best I can with you. So that's the context. And I studied film, like I mentioned. I went to university for 2 years at the University of California in Santa Barbara, and that was great. That was more of a studio system that they were teaching us. We were learning about film history and film production, but really from a studio perspective. Whereas on the East Coast, I did my last 2 years of university at NYU Film School, and that's more the independent approach to film production. And to this day, I can say that through the years, those two sides have been separating themselves more and more and more and more. What I mean by that is that although you can have an independent filmmaker make a Marvel movie, for example, it is such a different process and approach, just because the intention is so different. The intention is commercial in the case of the studio system, and rightfully so. It doesn't mean that it's not art, that they're not using the film language to express ideas that might be artful or artistic, but they really have to make sense commercially, of course. And whereas the independent filmmaking industry is just totally different. I mean, the idea there is really, even though it can be very expensive to make an independent film, nonetheless, the idea, I think, is to really make a great piece of art that will find an audience that way. So I heard about almost 10 years ago, maybe, that there was 80,000 films made the previous year. So I imagine that number is way higher today. So if you're making a movie, a feature film, you're probably amongst 100,000 other feature films made that same year. So that might be a discouraging idea, but think about if you were a painter or a writer, there's probably just as many, if not more, of that work being produced. So the accessibility to this technology to allow us to tell our stories is something that's been very freeing for me as a filmmaker, as opposed to something that's unnerving, if you will. So I always wanted to be a film director, and then I studied film. And during my last year at NYU, I had a kind of realization that I wanted to be more than a filmmaker. I didn't want to just get in line and have to pitch my movies all the time. And I just wanted to be like those guys in Singing in the Rain and just make the movies. And this is, I'm 43 now, so this is like 21 years ago that I graduated from college. And that was not, I'd had an email address for maybe a year. The internet was not what it is today. That I saw this article about Netflix some 20 years ago, and I started seeing it myself, that this is where we were all heading online. And I had a vision, you could say, of a kind of universe of film directors that were all part of the same universe. I would be one of those directors too. It was kind of like a TV station. It was the best way I could express it back in the day. I thought, more than a filmmaker, I want to have a TV station, an online TV station. And that dream remained, and I've done this in various ways. The first of which was by creating this website called momentfactory.com. I was, I think, 24 years old. I had an internet company that I'd started a year or two prior, and I started this website called momentfactory.com, where I would put one moment per week. So I had a small kind of email list that I would send this out to. There was absolutely no information on the website, only moment 1, moment 2, moment 3. And by moment 5, by the 5th week, I started getting a lot of positive feedback. I was kind of just sending this out there. And what I was putting out there were not just my movies. They were really VJ sources. I'd started VJing soon after I arrived in Montreal. A friend of mine showed me what VJing is. Do you know what VJing is?
It's blogging, as we'd call it here, as American youths.
Yeah, yeah. You could. It's kind of similar, but it's not quite that. A VJ is like a DJ, but a video jockey. And back in the beginning of the digital age, we would take like VHS tapes, then DVD players, then computers, and mix between sources, much like a DJ does between tracks. So this would often be done to electronic music and in nightclubs, you know, and all night long I'd be mixing my sources, adding effects in real time. And this was really kind of magic for me because it freed me as a filmmaker. I'd always, I'd understood that to make a movie, you need to write it, prepare, shoot it, edit it, and so on. It can take months, the entire process. And I was more of an improviser, if you will. So I was always kind of trying to remedy that, bring those two things together. And with VJing, it's like I could finally improvise cinema. So that was very freeing for me to learn to VJ, and in order to do that, I had to create like sources. So I would have like one movie, which is kind of an ambient film, not too much of a story, some kind of visual exploration. It might last 10 seconds, it might as a loop, or it might last 10 minutes, no matter. I would edit these separate sources together, like, and I would call them moments. They weren't really films or short films. I called them moments. So Moment Factory started having a bit of a buzz in Montreal. After a month or two, I started receiving videos, submissions, you could say, for the website from fellow VJs out there who recognized that what I was doing was something similar to them. And we also, I also got involved with my partners back in the day, that I think it's the website that created that attention from them as well. And soon enough, we started having a bit of demand. People were asking, oh, it's great what you're doing, but what is it? You know, there wasn't even a call for submissions, and people were submitting videos. So what is it? I mean, what is a moment? What is a Moment Factory? And what it really became is just about anything that people might the name Moment Factory might evoke in them. So we started doing a lot of video environments, video projections in nightclubs, like I mentioned, in other spaces, then on buildings, then in rock shows, and so on. Now I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you the website for the company that this became. And this company I sold a little over 10 years ago, and it's doing amazing. It's really they have over 300 employees, and let me turn off something here. Whoa. So now they have offices here and there all over the world. They're still right across the street here. And I guess this is the best thing that I could show, is just this opening page. And it gives you an idea of how vast the work can be. You know, you see how it can just be lighting, in the case of the bridge here, the Jacques-Cartier Bridge that they lit up a few years back, to rock shows and video environments that take over the entire space. And now a lot of people have asked me, how could you leave this great company? And the answer to that is that I'm really a storyteller. I'm a filmmaker, and that's where my interest lies. And after a while, it started being more of an effects production company, more than a film production company. And that's why I created Nomad. And a couple of years later is when the opportunity for me came along to to move on from Moment Factory. And luckily, I already had this other company going. And that's how I landed here. So Moment Factory for me was really about taking the screen and going beyond it, like breaking out of the screen, where to the point where there's just no screen anymore. It was so interesting for me to experiment that way in all kinds of new and different realms. But I also needed to bring it back in some way. Throughout all of this, I kept making films, of course. And I say, of course, because it's the most natural thing for me to do. I really mean that honestly. My first film is called The Eye of the Sun. It's a documentary, but I didn't realize it was a documentary until I started having some success in documentary film festivals.
Qu'est-ce que tu comptais là? Non, je me disais que lorsqu'on est sur la montagne, on se demande pourquoi est-ce qu'on fait ça. Même quand il pense, on dirait que c'est un personnage qui l'a fait, c'est pas nous autres.
The highest peak on this beautiful planet, summit of Mount Everest. You're watching Moment Factory.
That was The Eye of the Sun. I was 25 years old when I made that. When I was in 5th grade in elementary school, I wrote a comic book about climbing Mount Everest. And, you know, I kind of forgot about the comic book, oddly enough. And over 10 years later, I found myself living out that dream, that story I had in my mind. And that's really the way I approached it. I saw it like making a movie. This whole thing, like climbing the highest mountain on the planet, was just making and acting out a film. And that's why I say that I was surprised somewhat that it was a documentary in the end, because that's not the way I took it. I really wrote myself a script and then I lived it. And when I saw that you could do that, that you could write just about anything and then go live it, it really opened me up to the possibilities of life. And that, I think, impacted every film I made ever since, and just about everything I ever did, because I saw filmmaking suddenly as an excuse to live just about anything. My second film was called 99-Cent Dreams, and that movie is about basically that. It's about using the excuse of filmmaking to go live out your dreams. So I casted a few friends of mine. I interviewed them a few times until we found what each one of their real essential dream was. Mine was time travel, and it brought me to the North Pole and the South Pole, where all timelines meet. And so it was really taking the metaphorical and turning it into the literal by way of filmmaking. Another way that I lived out that dream, you could say, was through editing. You know, through the magic of editing, you can go and reshape your memories, reshape your past. And this second film became the kind of second of this trilogy that I see as the Time Rider trilogy, whereas The Eye of the Sun is about my past, where I come from. It's about my father and so on. And 99 Cent Dreams is about the present. I'll show you the trailer for that.
We take reality and we turn it into fiction. So nothing is staged, everything is real, but in the end, we are making things that are unreal. It's dreams. I'm looking for the truth.
We're off the rails. Now we are trains ourselves. No wait and see. We're off this place. Doesn't mean we're somewhere else.
So 99 Cent Dreams did exactly that. We went all over the world chasing after our dreams, really just to create that one moment of that one movie moment where the dream may come true. And I'll give you a simple, or my favorite example of a dream of fame that we started in New York, thinking, well, no one, even if you're running naked down the street, no one will look at you in New York. So that'll be a good way to start the story, kind of at the opposite end of the dream. And that's always what we try to do with each story. And then we went to Tokyo with him, where we... you see that scene briefly at the beginning of the trailer where I convince people to put up this guy's face up on the big screens in Shibuya Square, which is kind of like Times Square in Tokyo. And we did it. We succeeded. And because the Japanese people are more fanatic than just about any other culture, they would see him up there, look at him and think he's famous and ask him for an autograph. And you could see the glee in their eyes from meeting someone famous. So that was 99 Cent Dreams. Again, using this excuse of filmmaking to live just about anything. Our other dreams are dreams of love and flow and freedom, very common dreams. The last film I'll share with you, or trailer of one of my movies, I've made 6 overall. We're going to watch one of them together, is the last of this Time Rider trilogy, which sent me into the future.
Before the end of the world, the future in my hand, I'm going on an expedition to the last place on Earth.
Moi, dans le futur, j'aimerais bien vivre comme les Indiens, sans usine. Ça va recommencer, les hommes des cavernes, la découverte, encore puis encore.
If this was my last year on Earth, how would I live it any differently?
Papa, il s'en va sur son bateau. Bon voyage, papa.
We are going to Bouvet Island, the most remote place on the planet.
A lot of people have, grandiose expectations for the future.
Como de Hornos, South Georgia.
They will be, untouched.
When you go south, it's even worse, it's roughest.
That's the year she was born, is the year we left from the end of the world,
From Cape Horn to Cape of Good Hope, the end to the beginning.
Yeah.
If
if you're asking me about whales and dolphins and encounters in the water, this is a completely different story. You know, nothing goes over the mind, nothing goes over, you can't explain that logically, that there's something completely different going on.
We set out to find the last place on Earth, but we found the beginning of a new world.
Out completely, nature would reclaim this place. You know, the seals would just take over again, the penguins would take over again, and eventually what we have as humans would just decay and it would be back to nature.
A meter before, it's deep ocean. It's a volcano with a steep.
The biggest thing with Beauvais is that it's more about how steep the terrain is. Big rock, steep cliffs in every direction.
I was so amazed by this green, steep, rocky rock, like coming up of the ocean. It was like, wow, it really looks wild. It looks wild.
We could be stuck on this island for 5 or 7 days, you know, like that's what you've got to prepare for.
Now I'm ready. So, Bouvet Island, you can see from one film, Since the Eye of the Sun, that this theme is always there. This idea of making a movie to kind of play with not just the memory of it, but what's left of it after. It's almost like I've almost felt like if I don't make a film out of my experience, it makes me ask myself if it was worth living. I don't think it's true that it wasn't worth living, but it feels that way sometimes. So those are 3 films that are connected in this way. They're all a little different from one another, but they do have that link. I find that it's an exploration of the past, the present with 99 Cent Dreams, that idea of being in the moment and then of projecting oneself into the future with Bouvetoya. I assume you understood what Bouvetoya was about, right? It's essentially this trip on a ship that I took from the end of exploration from Cape Horn to Cape of Good Hope, which you could say is Africa, the beginning of civilization, by way of Bouvet Island, which was this unexplored place, the most remote island on the planet. And what I did is I collected these visions of the future that I put in a time capsule that I dug, that I put at the summit of Bouvet Island for my daughter, Alex, to come back to 50 years into the future and dig up, dig up the future, essentially. And the whole idea for me there was to really project myself, to write myself a future in a way, and also to it was a time, we still feel that way sometimes, where you feel like the future is so uncertain. You ask yourself, is there a future? And so having my second child coming that year, when I took this trip, she wasn't born yet. That was the idea for me, was to create a future for my daughters. That's what became Bouvetoya, the last place on Earth. Pretty cool adventures, huh? It's my other films are I do some fiction work as well, but with these three and Voices of Freedom, we're going to have looked at all at documentaries, at my documentaries. I think that's all of them, 4 out of 6. Well, what you're watching here, that's worth mentioning. What keeps popping up on the screen behind me here is a screensaver that I have going that you can all install if you have Macs, which I highly suggest you do. Go install the Nomad Slow TV screensaver, and what it is essentially I am producing 48 hours of seasonal content per year. So it's all this original content, and it's streaming live 24 hours a day, very much like I was talking about this idea of a TV station that I wanted to create. You could say I did that with momentfactory.com. I did it again some years later in 2014 with nomadlive.tv, where we started streaming 24 hours a day from festivals and all over the place. And it evolved into Nomad Slow TV. And as you can see, the shot just keeps going and going and going. And if you go dig onto the website, onto nomadslow.tv, you'll see what it's all about. It's really about being in the present moment and contemplating our world more and slowing down, really promoting slow living. And that's why these shots really, most of what I've been filming for Nomad Slow TV is just so nice to film, because I can just let things play out and I just follow beauty wherever it will take me. And it's very meditative, and it's fantastic. It's a project that I've really been enjoying, and I'm nearly done now with the 4th season, where I'm producing these 12 hours every season. Now we're in the midst of the winter season. This is my funky car that you can see there, barely. And I'll show you real quick Nomad Slow TV, just so you have that context. I don't know if you've been on my website, but I suggest you go check it out. Check out my universe a little bit. Here I announced that I'd be streaming these onto YouTube, which I'm doing right now. That's on the website, and you can see much of the other things that we got going, other projects we've done. You know, if you want to learn more about me, you'll find all of my films. Everything is in here. There's also my personal website that you'll find on jasonrodi.com. But what I wanted to show you was our Slow TV station. And just in front of me here is we have the machines going with this live stream that's going 24 hours a day. Yeah, we'll spend a little, we'll go check this out next week. I think it'd be worth it that I show you the Nomad Manifesto, and that I'll show you as well the kind of reel for Nomad Slow TV, and give you an idea, a better idea of what that's all about. But you're getting a good idea here of my projects, of who I am, which is a good segue into Voices of Freedom. This is going to bring us into the subject, really. I mentioned how when I was a child that I associated better to American culture than I did to Canadian culture. And I imagine that is something that is very common for non-Americans who love movies and have been exposed and influenced by the American culture that's disseminated through this very strong industry that is Hollywood. Is that something, I'm curious if one or two of you can comment on this. I'm curious to know whether you feel that that is the case. Is that something, do you realize that the rest of the world kind of identifies with American culture, whatever that may be? Yeah, go ahead, Donovan.
I was just gonna say my father's actually Canadian, and he immigrated here about 15 or so years ago. Met my mom, but for a lot of like the movie, like some of his favorite movies of all time, like the old Clint Eastwood films, John Wayne films, like this very American, very like cowboy frontier-esque aesthetic and culture is what he remembers watching when he was a kid. And like that was one of like they're still some of his favorite movies of all time. Like we watched them when I was a kid, and they are American, and that's what he more not identifies with. He's not a cowboy, but that's what he more enjoys and likes, as opposed to like some of the stuff that he also saw when he was a kid growing up, but through a Canadian lens. It's really fun to see that even though he's not American, he enjoys it much more than I do. He's like, how can you not enjoy these spaghetti Western films? I'm like, they're okay. They're fine.
Yeah, it's I love what you just said, Donovan. That's exactly the idea. You know, we watch these movies and we see Indiana Jones. We want to travel. You know, we want to travel in that way, have those kinds of adventures. I also really connected with the cowboy or Western culture. And to this day, I think to myself, there's this town near the Grand Canyon called Williams, which is featured in Voices of Freedom. And I keep thinking to myself, oh, that'd be the perfect place for me to go retire someday, if I ever retire. And that's the way I picture my life, like on a ranch somewhere in a Western, you know. And I'm not alone. Anybody else have something of the sort that they can express, or that maybe you think it's the other way around, that you might not have realized, that people outside of, maybe it's only Canadians that feel that way too. Maybe it's not as prevalent in the rest of the world as it is to your northern neighbors. Anybody else have something? I'm curious for myself. That's really why I'm asking. No? Alex, maybe, yeah?
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Alex, first, please.
I have seen vocalizations from people across the world that they find it annoying how USA-centric, especially a lot of media, tends to be. They feel there's a lack of representation of their own media, and even on socials. People will be saying, it's like, wow, is everyone paying attention to the politics today? It's so important. And then someone ends up saying, it's like, well, okay, I am dealing with a stressful situation in my own country, and you seem to be impressing that I need to care more about your country. There's a USA exceptionalism that is blasted across so many forms of media.
Yeah, and maybe rightfully so. You know, I don't feel like there's something wrong with it for me. But I can see how people might react like that. But we'll talk a lot about that, because all of Canadian cinema is based on this idea that the American culture is so strong that we needed to subsidize our own culture up here to finance artists and filmmakers, so that we would have a culture of our own to speak of, you know, so that we wouldn't be eaten up by this excellent American content. Jake, as well, you wanted to mention something.
Yeah, kind of going on. I didn't realize it too much at first. I knew there was a pretty strong American exceptionalism, but I didn't. A year or two ago, I was recommended like a foreign film that was in a different language. And I remember not being able to find a version with subtitles. And and then the realization hit me that the rest of the world has to wait for their, like, whether it be Marvel movies or like just any movie that comes from America, they have to wait for subtitles, or they might have to grab it illegally. Like, it kind of put that into perspective. I was like, wow, I didn't realize that.
That's right. But, you know, you're so good at this that they do all of the translating right away. You know, even I was watching a lot of American movies in French, and they were translated into French into French from France, like with their accent and dialect. So that's also something else. Like in my own mind, I was thinking of what sounds right, and it started being this accent which wasn't my own. So we're going to explore that in this class a lot. You know, I'm going to show you kind of express my journey from feeling more American, despite not speaking the language, never having been there, but feeling more American than Canadian, and then my long journey into my own cultural identity, which is one that is really based in Montreal, and even beyond this, in my own neighborhood of Montreal. So from one class to the next, we're going to come in and closer until you discover the Myland for yourself here, and you might see for yourself why it is that I ended up connecting with this and seeing, yes, this is who I am. This is where I come from, not only where I come from, but this is what I identify with. So before I show Voices of Freedom, I want to mention why it is I made that film. Can you turn the exposure down just a little, Hannah, please? It seems a little overexposed. Yeah, thank you. So Voices of Freedom, I won't tell you exactly when I kind of have to tell you when I made it. I'll just say that when Trump became a candidate for the presidency and started talking about fake news and about the misrepresentation of the American people in media. So I think he was talking about that you know, he was amongst the first to start that conversation, quite forcefully so. And then it became a subject, you know, like I'd be watching the news and they would talk about that. And I thought that was interesting that I'm watching the news and they're trying to talk to real Americans. But having lived in the States for myself and having loved the country from afar, I was not recognizing the America I knew. And I couldn't find it anymore. I couldn't find it in the movies. I couldn't find it anywhere. It's like this authenticity that I had gotten to know so well, and that I know in all American people that I had met. So instead of kind of just doing research online or trying to watch more movies or more news to try to connect myself better and better and better with the American people, I did exactly the same thing I did with my previous films. But instead of turning the camera towards myself, like I did too many times, frankly, I turned it towards others, towards Americans. And Charlotte and I, who's listening right now, my spouse, we left together. And we traveled across the States, meeting people from all walks of life with the real purpose of connecting. And so we're going to watch it now. Like I said, it's over 80 minutes. Sometimes I might mention a few things. If you want to mention something, if you want to interrupt the film, go ahead and do so. It's okay. I can pause it if I feel the need, you know. It's a lot of the movie flows, so it's okay if we can stop and have a bit of a discussion as it's going, or that you mention, oh, that was really interesting, and then I will remind us that we want to talk about that again a little later. So I guess that's it, right? We dive into it. Voices of Freedom.
We are nomad. Without borders, without politics or judgment, we explore the earth, its people and customs. These are chronicles out of time and sequence, recounting the words of Americans we met on our journey, looking for common threads and unity across a discourse on our most common human value, freedom.
If we don't fight for our freedom, for who we are, we'll lose it forever.
We're having a very curious time down here, bringing up some very sore points in our American culture.
Now we ride around and we're getting it. Give us the guillotine because we're killing it. It's hard to flourish when you're malnourished.
Maybe they just get rid of the parties altogether. No Democrat, no Republican, just people.
We can discuss next week, but what I'm curious about is how do you feel that this film comes from a Canadian perspective? Does it? Does it not? Like, does it feel like an American made it, or does it feel like somebody else made it? That's something you can discuss in your in the discussion on your blog post for this week. So check out the discussion section in the Canvas there, and you have a link to the movie there as well if you want to check it out again, or a piece of it or something like that. I really hope you enjoyed it, and it's really special for me to share this with you in this way. To give a class in this way, and especially since this film is rather recent for me. We just released it in 2020. It's a great opportunity for me to share it with you now and get some feedback, really. So does I don't want to go. I mean, I could stay, but at the same time, technically the class is over. So I don't want to take any more of your time unless you might need to go somewhere. But if some of you want to stick around for another 5-10 minutes, I'd love to hear some feedback already on that very question. Is the perspective, does it feel like a Canadian perspective, or would you not have known the difference had you not known who made the film? Anybody?
I feel like asking all the same questions to all the different people is really important and prolific when you're trying to find people's perspectives, because the film really looked at a lot of different walks of life. And I thought that was extraordinarily interesting, hearing from people who normally you don't hear their voice very often. So I feel like I did get a Canadian perspective in the way that the film went to all these different people, all normal, average people who, are just randomly selected almost. They're just people out on the street, and you're asking them all the same questions and all the same, and you get a different answer every time. So,
just to riff off that.
Yeah, and
go for it.
Yeah, I just want to mention something real quick, Donovan, about that. Most of the interviews were planned. I'd say like about half of them were planned and half of them were random in some way. I do always ask the same questions, and I had asked that question about freedom before to other people other than Americans. And I saw that when you ask anyone what your definition of freedom is, very often you get their passions come out. Whatever they care most about, that's what they'll end up talking about. And another quick thing I wanted to mention is my interview style. Larry King just passed away recently, and this wasn't conscious on my part, but I think he and I have a similar interview style in that his questions are very simple. He comes into an interview not prepared. He might be prepared, but he'll pretend that he's not. So if I were interviewing the president of the United States, for example, I would say, "What's your name? What do you do?" "Oh, what does that mean, the president of the United States?" "Okay, what is that job? What's that like? Really, what do you like about it?" Then I go always towards the positive. So if I'm talking to someone about a musician, I'm going to ask them, "Oh, what is music?" And suddenly you get very deep answers to very, very, very simple and questions that are not challenging. So I don't like putting my subjects on the spot. Some great interviewers, that's what they do,
So I just wanted to mention those things. It has nothing to do with being Canadian, but it is an interview style, and it brings out what's there. Don't you feel, though, that there's not as much of a sensationalist kind of approach to the storytelling? Something that is perhaps Canadian in comparison. Donovan, you were going to say something?
Just to kind of build off of what Anders was saying earlier, these are people who aren't talked to often and are not as represented, and it's more genuine. I think you were just touching upon that now. When you're asking the same questions of these simple questions, you get genuine results, and the perspective it came at was not from like a how policy and like what we're going to do, solving it, like left-leaning policies or whatever policy aisle of the argument, like policies. It was coming from what does freedom mean to you, and it came from somewhat of a objective, like genuine perspective, as opposed to like this frame, like sensationalized, like this is this side's opinion, this is this side's opinion, who's right, who's wrong. It was just a very genuine feeling, especially from a lot of people who were just telling you what they thought freedom was, and not like this is what it has to be. It's like, this is what I think freedom is.
Yeah, and there's no judgment, right? You're not judging the person as you're talking to them when you're interviewing them, but also in the film, it kind of melds everybody together into this one voice. And I'll say something interesting about that. I've made, like you saw before, a lot of very subjective films, that talk about me in a gonzo kind of experiential manner. But strangely, now when I watch this film, it seems like I'm the one talking the whole way through, from one person to another, even if they're talking about something that I might not personally agree with. Somehow, as the filmmaker, it feels like they're all speaking on my behalf. They're saying what I wish I would be saying, essentially. That's very interesting for me to experience that. It's a kind of empathy, right? That is needed as an interviewer to just come in and I also try to make people look as good as possible, not just physically, but after in the editing, I'll cut out if a point doesn't seem as strong. I want him to look good. I want him to look at the movie later and feel proud to be in it. That might be a good thing, that might not, but it's my approach. It might come across here. I think it helps you as an audience member watch the film without judgment again, and just kind of take the people in a stream of consciousness almost manner. Does anybody else have something they'd want to add? All right, so check out the whatever I wrote there in the discussion. This has been a real pleasure for me. I'm really enjoying this already. Next week, we're going to start talking about Canadian cinema instead of talking about me, which we're all going to appreciate. We're going to get on with the Canadian context. So I'd like you to always, before each class, just take a look at the syllabus, take a look at what the next class is about. Maybe I'll put a couple of links for you to check out some movies or something like that. Just so that we can familiarize ourselves with the content. Maybe you can prepare yourself some questions you might want to ask. You can ask them beforehand. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Really a pleasure to be with you guys. If nobody else has anything else they want to add or any questions they might have, I'm going to leave you to some slow TV. Is that what it is? All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining me this week. I'm going to see you next Thursday, all right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Have a good one.